Welcome to GEMs Uncut. I'm Heather.
I'm Molly.
Let's cut it up. Ooh, okay. So today is probably the least fun topic that we ever bring up in client meetings, but we lead with a question, and that question goes, what is your biggest asset?
Ooh, what is it?
Well, what are some responses that we typically get?
My house, like my 401k.
Yeah, it is. And typically we come in with like the dun 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 dun. It is not. It is your working ability. Can you imagine for your household what life would look like if you could not work?
Very different than I had planned and
Yeah.
my goals say.
Yes, and it has a lot to say too whenever it comes to even being a stay-at-home mom, because you provide possibly even more value than the working, or I say stay-at-home mom, a stay-at-home parent possibly provide more value, more monetary value in the sense of all of the things than a working parent.
Absolutely. It's, not fun to think about, but it's like disability insurance is where that comes into play, and that is your paycheck's bodyguard, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
It's a thing that protects you. And I think something that I know we'll talk about myths here in a second, but it's a common thing to think about is like, oh, that's never going to happen to me. But like disabilities are so common in the sense they come from an injury, they come from a surgery or an illness, like not the crazy skydiving and bungee jumping and like deep sea diving that we think of, like, oh, like Johnny Knoxville.
Right.
Like, no, it comes from just like everyday life. And we always say 1 in every 4 people are going to experience a disability that like prevents them from being able to work.
Yep, that's the stat. 1 in 4. Like, line them up.
Yeah.
It can happen to anybody.
That means it's probably going to happen in your family to somebody.
Right. Absolutely. Thinking about some myths whenever people think about disability insurance. I don't need it. I'm healthy.
Yeah. Well,
right now.
You are until you're not.
Until you're not. Until you're no longer invincible in your mind.
Right. Does anyone ever really think like, oh, I'm never going to get this or that? Like, sure, we have the best of intentions, but like, can we control any of that? No, not really.
Right. And of course, when you hope that you have or can use some disability insurance because something happens, no, you can no longer get DI when you need DI. So
that's when you have to start using the GoFundMes.
Right. Absolutely. Or you have to completely change your lifestyle, sell your home, possibly move into government housing. We've seen it all. We've heard it all.
Yeah.
It can be very, very scary. Honestly, one of the biggest vulnerabilities that we talk to with some people.
Absolutely. Another myth is, I have savings, I'll be fine. But how long will you be fine? I mean, most people have an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months, which is very common. They have investments elsewhere. But like, okay, like, let's see, I'm 34, about to be 35. Do I have enough assets to last me potentially until retirement if I can no longer work ever again? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Like, at least not the lifestyle I want to live.
Likely not.
Yeah. But it's like, that's a pretty big bet to make, to think your savings would just be okay. Or maybe even like, my family will take care of me. I know my parents, my in-laws, they would do anything they could to help out, of course. But, it's not like their assets are unlimited either. Like, it's like asking them to take care of me like I'm their like newborn baby. But until I'm 65, so that might be longer.
Right.
Than
They
when
might
actually
run out
took
of
care
money.
of me.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one is like, oh, I have that coverage through work. Hey, if you're able to sign up for long-term and short-term disability through work, that is awesome. However, some questions that we still proceed to ask are, do you pay for a portion of that benefit, or does your employer fully pay for it? And then let's take a look at the benefits guide that you're given to see what the terms are, because sometimes it goes to a certain age, or if it's a certain percentage of your income is paid out. So we need to know those, because it will not pay 100% of your salary.
Yeah, or like forever. I mean, think if you became disabled at 30, do you really think that insurance policy is going to pay out until you're of retirement age and able to pull Social Security? Not through work. Absolutely not.
Right.
They're like most likely only going to cover like a couple years, maybe at most, That's why it's so important to look at it and get something outside.
Yes, absolutely. Whenever it comes to short-term versus long-term, short-term is exactly what it sounds like. It's going to be for the shorter term. The long term is really the main character whenever it comes to disability, and the most important if it comes down to which one should I get or should I have both.
Yeah. Short term, I think this is something all of us women more than likely are going to need, because this encompasses, it's kind of weird to think about, but a maternity leave. It's kind of weird to think like that as a disability, but in a lot of instances where companies don't have just straight up maternity leave policies, like it is actually short-term disability, which is very weird. So I know in a previous podcast even talked about like if you do not actually opt in for it, like, and sometimes it can be seen as a pre-existing condition if you're already pregnant and opting for it. So it's like, it's just weird. It's not something you'd think of, but it is. But it could be also like a surgery. Like I think about like my brother had to have a surgery on his foot. This is well before COVID, and he couldn't go into work. Like that's a short-term disability. It could just be it's just something that's very temporary. So it could be an illness as well.
Absolutely. One thing to always note about disability coverage too is there's typically for short-term and long-term an elimination period where you have to prove you're disabled, and then also you have to wait. Having those shorter term buckets like your emergency fund and all that built up properly is super important if you're not receiving a paycheck for that time period.
Well, yeah, especially because a lot of common waiting periods are a month, 3 months, like, you know, it's a good bit of time. So if you have the appropriate emergency fund, like you'll be fine, but that doesn't mean things aren't stressful, of course, but
right. Absolutely.
But then you got that long term. This is like the financial generator for when the paycheck goes out. Like this kicks in because it's something that is more than just a short time frame. This could be something that impacts you for many, 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 many years. I mean, theoretically between now and your retirement.
Absolutely. I think the hardest thing when talking about disability with clients is that you do pay into this benefit, and if you don't use it, you lose it. And so that's why it's the most unfun conversation to have, and it's why it's put off the most, but it is most likely to happen. And of course, you don't want it until you need it. And so for a portion of somewhere between 1% and 3% of your income typically, you can protect your biggest asset. I mean, it's a no-brainer in our eyes. It's just something that, like, if you're not being told, hey, this is a vulnerability in your life, and you haven't talked with your family and your loved ones about what would happen if our income went missing, what would life look like? You all have to be on the same page, and it's just very good to be aware, even if you don't go ahead and dive in with it. Being aware is better than nothing, and maybe having some sort of game plan.
Absolutely. I mean, so everyone really needs disability insurance, but like people that like it's a non-negotiable, like you have to have it in your household, really fall like medical professionals. I mean, in what we do, like we can sit at a computer and like do most of our things, but if we're performing a surgery or like taking care of another human patient, like it's going to be really hard to do that if you break both your arms and both your legs or whatnot. High risk, maybe physical labor professionals. Think about like police officers, firefighters. I mean, there's a lot of people that fall in that category. Just like we said, surgeons, anyone that has like precision in what they do. I mean, this could be an artist. You break your arms, you can't do your job anymore. Sales execs, and realtors, high income earners, especially those that are a one income household. Like if you have a stay-at-home parent and the other parent is working, what if they can't do their job anymore? And you've been the stay-at-home parent. That would mean that you have to go back to work, and that could be really difficult if maybe you've been home for several years. Attorneys, I mean, there's so many examples in there that like absolutely, like, you got to make sure.
And not everybody is insurable. That's another reason to just always have the conversation to know what would we do. There are job professions that are uninsurable. Hopefully you are getting some benefits through work, and they're always going to be looking at your actual income to be able to place you with some coverage. So, you know, everybody is different. This is why we are here to educate and to say, talk to a CFP, talk to a financial advisor that holds a fiduciary responsibility, because, you may not be able to get it, but hey, if we're not, let's take that consideration into the future. God forbid something like that does happen, we can be somewhat prepared. But when it comes to like giving some examples about how this can affect families, my family, we have a personal example because my mother was diagnosed with brain cancer going on 10 years ago. And unfortunately, she was still young, lower, and she still had so much of her working career ahead of her. Honestly, her biggest accumulation years to be able to retire happily and continue to build that nest egg for a happy future. And she was not able to go back to work. She is fully disabled. And we had to rely, the family, for her portion of the income on her Social Security disability that she was allowed. It is virtually nothing. I mean, if she was living on her own and did not have my father, who is the breadwinner of the family, to support our family, life would be devastating. Absolutely devastating. Right. So just kind of living through a part that we did not have disability coverage on her or long-term care coverage, which with her state, she can continue to live, and that could affect in that area as well, because she's been disabled for 10 years. And so by the grace of God, you know, my dad being the breadwinner and everything else coming into play, things are going to be okay. But it doesn't mean that there's not stress. There's not, oh my gosh, this does drastically change some things. Now we have to take this into consideration rather than just being prepared from the beginning and not having that stress. Right. So, you know, again, you're missing that accumulation of retirement that you think you're going to have. That changes a whole bunch of things. Yeah. And then also just that current income that you're receiving going down by 60, 70%. Like literally look in the mirror, both you to the two money makers in the home, and say, if we lost your income and only got 30% of your income for the rest of our lives, could we make it by? Are we okay with having to drastically change our lives, our kids' lives? So many things to think about.
Yeah, I think, you know, you obviously have an example with your mom, and you bring up a good point that you don't, I think, even realize you said, is that your mom has Social Security disability. That is not a given right to everyone.
Right.
You have to work so many years to have that, yes. And even with state pensions. Yes. So, like, I have had people that I know that have had a disability, but they didn't work long enough to get that perfect benefit through, or no benefit. So then it's like, they're kind of SOL. But we've also seen on the flip side where, you know, people become disabled. It's a very unfortunate thing, but that financial burden is relieved because they know, hey, well, I've got 60 whatever percent, 80% maybe coming in right. of what my income was. So at least, you know, I don't have to make that dramatic change in my lifestyle right. versus like, okay, now I got to go cut Netflix and do all of these things to make sure I could, you know, pay my debts and all the things like the food on the table. So right. we've seen all different ends of the spectrum. So
exactly,
it's very important conversations to have. Not fun, but important.
Yes. And whenever it comes to employer place long-term disability, typically that amount ranges from 50 to 60% of your actual income. So it's a great benefit. If you do leave the employer, you do leave that benefit. But whenever we do meet with people, we address like, hey, what does your employer provide? What are you signed up for? Let's get you signed up for that, because we definitely want to take advantage of that. But on top of it, hey, should we supplement you know, the remaining percentage to get you to a more comfortable living space if that were to happen? So you don't necessarily always need a full-on coverage. You can get something supplemental, but also it's always good to see like what would be covered, what is offered, can I get approved, because it does come down to health as well. So, you know, always want to just protect your biggest assets at the end of the day. And so like your income is your biggest wealth building tool all around, whether it's current income or your future, to be able to put extra dollars towards those goals. So you want to protect it like it's the last slice of pizza at girls' night.
Yep. That's cheesy.
Oh my goodness. We've been making too many episodes. So anyway, if this episode made you start thinking a little bit, like get in your head, get talking to your loved ones, reach out to us through our website. We can be found at www.gemwealth.com. And what we like to say here at GEMS Uncut is stay consistent, give yourself grace, because every gem starts uncut.